One of the more powerful things that you said to me was when your dad said, a white man killed my brother. You talking about peace and Vietnam. All of this has to do with not party affiliation, but everybody, the country itself, what some people in my conservative movement call the deep state. Is that why you're running for president as an independent? Because all of these people are responsible for all of these things, wars, spending, not enough spending in social programs, more spending in defense spending, actions abroad, killing innocents abroad with drones. Is that kind of why you're an independent?
Oh, yeah, I mean, the kind of unraveling the warfare state is part of it. Both political parties have particularly since the Citizens United case in 2008, when all the tsunami of corporate money started flowing into Washington, D.C., I think both political parties have lost their way, and it's really what people call the uniparty. They're all getting their money from BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. They all get their money from the military contractors, from Raytheon, from Northrop Grumman, from General Dynamics, Boeing, and Lockheed. And, if you look at the leadership of the Republican Democratic Party, all of them are all in for the Ukraine war, which is a war that should have never been fought. That Putin has repeatedly tried to settle on very favorable terms to us. And then, the other issues, the freedom of speech, which we saw so badly compromised, and the other constitutional rights during COVID, and then just the war on the poor. The Democratic Party was supposed to be the party of the poor, but it's been 30 years since the Democratic Party did anything for the poor. And there's a lot of, I just read an article on our way over here, a new poll that came out that showed that 20% of blacks who voted for President Biden the last time are not going to vote for him this time. That they're, a lot of them are now moving over to me. But, if you look at President Biden, and I don't attack the president personally or anything, but a lot of black Americans were, discouraged by the crime bills, particularly in 1986.
Should have been discouraged in 2020, but
they should have.
We won't go to that.
Yeah, but it's a lot of those issues, are Trump's issues too. He appointed the Supreme Court that threw out affirmative action. But President Biden and Kamala have distressing records on crime. He was the sponsor of the 1986 crime bill, which governed crack cocaine and gave crack cocaine 100 times the prison sentence, 100 times the length of prison sentence to powder cocaine. There's no difference. It's just that blacks tended to use crack and whites tended to use powder. And then the 1994 crime bill that did all the mandatory sentencing and three strikes and all of those, and built all these prisons, and it doubled the black prison population in our country. So all the blacks that went to prison between 1865 and 1994, within 6 years, that number had doubled. And now, 1 out of every 3 blacks will have a prison experience. And, prison doesn't end at prison. You're permanently a second-class citizenship. So after that, it's very hard to borrow money. It's very hard to get a loan. It's very hard to get a decent job. And you're dooming an entire race of American citizens to a new form of Jim Crow, an informal form of Jim Crow that's just permanent second-class citizenship. And, you can say, well, the mistakes were made. but we should be changing them.
Right.
You know, we should be unraveling the prison industrial complex. All of these people who are in jail because of drug offenses, when a lot of these drugs are legal now, you know, there's still people serving 20, 30-year sentences for marijuana.
Well, let me ask you this then. Let me ask kind of a similar question in a different way. You're running as an independent. Do you believe that you've been forced to run as an independent because of the Democrat Party, or are you running as an independent because of all the issues you just laid out that both parties are not dealing with?
No, my initial plan was to run as a Democrat and then try to reclaim the Democratic Party for the Kennedy Democratic Party, the Democratic Party that my father and my uncle had stood for. And if you go down the boxes of all the things that they believed in, the values they had, the issues they were interested in, I would check 100% of those. But I think the Democratic Party has lost its way. I was raised in the Democratic Party. Leaving the Democratic Party for me is almost like leaving the Catholic Church. You know, it's almost unimaginable for me, for all these sentimental, for nostalgic reasons, for relationships and all of the, I built relationships in that party for 40 years, for my entire life. And so walking away from that was heartbreaking for me. I was the last person in my campaign to say, okay, we got to do this. Dennis Kucinich, who was managing my campaign from the beginning, he said, they are never going to let you run. And now, you see what they've done, which is they're getting rid of all the primaries. They're canceling primaries in Florida, North Carolina, all these, New Hampshire, all these other states.
This is the party, by the way, that's telling everyone that the Republicans are voter suppressors,
anti-democratic,
and they're they support voters' rights. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and they're disenfranchising, all of these voters. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump's, but the idea that we should legally prohibit him from running for a crime, which is insurgency, which he's never been convicted of, never been even charged with. That just seems wrong to me. There's half the people, the voters in this country, actually, every poll, the majority of voters, and it's a plurality, but the biggest chunk of voters in this country right now want to vote for Trump. And you're going to tell those people you can't do it?
Right.
What kind of problem do you think that's going to solve?
Right.
It's all it's going to do is amplify the polarization,
Absolutely.
to deafening. All those people are going to be angry.
Right.
And you're never going to bring them back into the fold. So, a lot of Democrats.
And if they react in a violent way, they'll be blamed for that.
Well, yeah, and I would blame them if they react violently.
You would. You would.
If they react violently, they shouldn't be doing that. But it doesn't solve any problem.
Would you understand it though?
Well, I understand it when, I understand that when people react violently, but it's not an excuse.
Right. I understand.
I could get angry at you and punch you because you said something wrong, and I would understand why I did it.
Right. It still would be wrong.
Yeah, you'd still be wrong, but the larger point is, what are we solving by pissing off half the people in this country, right? Do I think that Trump would like to be a dictator? Yes, I think he would. Do I think the institutions of American government are strong enough to prevent anything like that from ever happening? Yeah,
absolutely.
I do. As badly corroded as the institutions are, they're not, you have Congress there that would have to go along with it. You have the military that would have to go along with it. You have all these regulatory agencies and law enforcement agencies and police power. And none of them wants that. And none of them are going to let them do it. So, you know, and in fact, he has some people around him who are going to tell him you can't do that too.
So let's